previous class, I was talking about the working population ratio, how many people are working and how many people are involved in the productive activity and how many people are contributing to the national income. So when we are talking about this, we have, in the last class, I've just stopped in one of the topic, that is worker population ratio. As I told you in the last class, what is worker population ratio? In the total population, how many people are contributing, producing goods and services and contributing to the national income, that population is called as working population ratio. So when I was talking about it, so I told you, I have already briefed you that male ratio is more than the female ratio. When it comes to overall working population, we have observed that every time the male contribution to the production, the male contribution to the employment, it is really very higher. So, in 100 people, how many people are employed in an urban place? Only 15 people are employed in the urban place. When it comes to rural area, for 100 people, 25 people are employed in a rural area. What we get to know is, more than the urban area, the rural area people contribution to the working population ratio, it is really very higher. So you can see here, for 100, only 15 people are participating, where for 100 people, 25 people are participating. So you can say that in the rural area, the people who are living, they staying the population ratio, which is very higher in a rural area, at the same time to the contribution to the world population, the working population ratio from rural only contribution is really very higher. So after this, so if working population ratio, if it is higher, that means the people are employed, their contribution to the national income, it is high, which is really very positive thing. On the other side, if you say that the worker population ratio, if it is less, that means the people who are employed, it can be in the rural, it can be in the urban. So their contribution, their employment, which is less. If it is less, the production will be less, which is not good for any economy. So this way, working population ratio, always it should be more. If it's more, production is more. If production is more, national income will be more. If national income is more, so definitely country growth in the world recognition, it will be growing very faster. Because of that reason, we say that population ratio should be more. So now, after working population ratio, we'll come to the next concept. The next concept is self-employed and hired workers. Who is self-employed and the hired workers? So, the people who are working, we can categorize them into 3 ways. The first one, self-employed people. The second one, casual laborers. And the third one, regular salaried people. You can see here the 3 categories, we can classify them into self-employed, casual wage laborers, and regular salaried employees. Who is self-employed? Who is casual wage laborers? Who is regular salaried employees? So first of all, let me talk about self-employed people. Who is self-employed actually? Without depending on anyone, they're owning their own business, factory, institution, anything, and they're earning their livelihood owned by themselves, not depending on anyone. That's called self-employed. They are not depending on anybody that they are going to give them job. Without depending on anybody, they have started some business. It can be stitching clothes. It can be driving any kind of a vehicle. It can be starting own institutions, starting their own hospitals, starting their own teaching institutions. So this way, so many people, they can start their own institutions, their own earning point, their livelihood. So that's called self-employment, without depending on anybody, earning their own livelihood with their own ideas and techniques. So that's called self-employed. On the other, the second one is casual wage laborers. Who is casual wage laborers? They are not permanent in the nature. So one day they are working here, another day they'll be migrating and working in some other place. The work is not permanent for them. It can be work, it can be salary, it is not permanent for the people. If they are working today here in this building construction, tomorrow they will be working in some other hospital construction. In one permanent place, they are not working at the same time if their wages are not fixed and their job is not fixed in one particular place, then they will be called as casual wage laborers. We're going to use when we need it. So they are casual wage laborers. On the third one, we have regular salaried employees. Who is regular salaried employees? One of the example is me. I'm working in one of the institutions. I'll be paid every month one fixed salary, remuneration, otherwise in economic terms I can say wages. I'm earning a wages, for every month a fixed remuneration will be fixed. I'm fixed in one job, an agreement in my hand, so I'll be working continuously in this particular institution with a fixed salary, so then I'll be as regular salaried employees. If you ask me what is the difference between the casual wage laborers and regular salaried employees, the difference is very minimal. Because they are not permanent in the job. When we need the needy time, we are going to use them and they're going to migrate. But regular salary people, they are permanent in a nature, they will be working continuously in that institution for very long. Their remuneration is not fixed and their remuneration will be fixed. They will be having oral agreement, just I'm telling them, you come here and work. But when it comes to regular salary people, we will be having written agreement. So the difference between the casual wage laborers and the regular salary discussing when it comes to formalization of employment. So we'll talk about two beautiful pie diagrams we have. In the shape, it is not exact round. Here, we have three classification, as I said. This is the one classification which shows the 43%. Another classification shows the 42%. Another classification shows 15%. When it comes to 15%, let's talk about the 43%. What is the 43% here? The 43% which we are showing here in this diagram, which is related to urban area, this particular diagram talks about the self-employed. Can you see this? This particular design, we have it here. So this is 43% that is self-employed. In the urban area, how many percent of people they are self-employed? In the urban area, 43% of the population, they are self-employed. When it comes to 42% in the urban area, this particular design resembles this. So this is regular salaried employees. The regular salaried people are 42%. That means the people who are working as a teachers, lawyers, doctors. So these all people comes under regular salaried people. And the percentage in the urban area, that is 42%. I'm not talking about overall India. I'm talking about only urban places. 42% people, they are regular salaried people. For the regular salary, for the monthly salary, we are employed. That's called 42% of people. And when it comes to 15%, the 15% what we are saying, that is casual wage laborers. Only 15% of the population in the urban area, they are working as casual wage laborers. When it comes to the comparison, the highest people, they are working as a self-employed. The second, definitely regular salaried. And the third one, which is very minimum, that is casual wage laborers. The second diagram, which belongs to rural area, when it comes to rural area, you can see this, a design which resembles here. 56% of the population, they are self-employed. Why 56% of the population, they are self-employed? Because they are dependent on agriculture. The maximum people in the rural area, they are dependent on agriculture directly or indirectly. That's why the maximum percentage who are employed in a rural area, they belongs to agricultural sector. So on the other side, you have second rank with the 35% that is casual wage laborers, which 35%, which is really very, very less in a urban area. In urban area, the casual laborers are only 15%. When it comes to rural area, 35% of the population, there are casual wage laborers who migrates to one or the other places and they work in the street side working, it can be construction work, so it can be the transportation work, they will be employed in those kind of places. And the last and the least one in the rural area, that is 9%, which is regular salaried employees. That means what we got to know is in the rural areas, only 9% of people, they are regular salaried. The permanent job in a nature, the secure job we call it as, only 9%. But if you compare that in an urban area, 42% are regular salaried. So definitely, if you compare rural area and the urban area, both the side, definitely the self-employment is very much leading. So let me come with the last explanation of this particular topic, which is self-employed in the hired one. So this is the comparison between the urban and the rural area. But right now, we have self-employed casual wage laborers and regular salaried people, comparison whole India, how exactly the percentage-wise. Self-employed people in the first one, which is the highest ranking, it can be in the rural area and the urban area. In the rural area, if it's 56%, in the urban area, 43% of population, they are independent, they are gaining their livelihood by their own, without depending on anybody. So when it comes to India also, 52% of the population, they are self-employed without depending on anybody. They are working their own and they're earning their livelihood. And the second place, definitely it is casual wage laborers with a 30%. 30% of the population in the country as labor. They migrate from one place to one place. They migrate from one job to another job. Their wages, nothing fixed, including place. They will be the percentage-wise, when it comes to, it is 30% in country, 30% of the population who are employed, they are employed as casual wage laborers. It's a really very big, we talk about it. And the last one at the same time, very least percentage of participation of a sector, that is regular salaried people. When it comes to it is only 18%. Like that means the people who are secure there in job. So in the job, in the salary-wise, in the agreement-wise, who are really very much secure, that is regular salaried people, and their contribution is only 18%. That means only 18% of the people, they are dependent on regular salaried people. So that is really very much least, which is not good for a country development. At the same time, the own security, the social security will be less. But we'll talk about this in a future topics. The next topic which we're going to talk about, that is employment in firms, factories, and offices. How many people are employed in a different sectors? On the basis of economy, we classified, at the beginning, we classified into 8 different types of occupations. The first category are different sectors, they are different occupations. Let's go with, the first one was agriculture sector, the people who are working in the farms, cultivating, these people are on agriculture sector. The second one is mining and quarrying, and the third one, manufacturing. First one, agriculture, mining and quarrying. The third one, manufacturing sector, and the fourth one, electricity, gas, and water supply, which is the fourth sector, your fourth sector of occupation. Construction, the people who involve themselves in the construction work. And sixth one, transportation and storage, the people who are involved themselves in the transportation at the same time in the storage facility. They are called the sixth area where the people are dependent. On the seventh area, which is trade area, where people, whatever surplus goods they have, they export and they import, that area is called as trade area. And the last area which we classified, that is service sector. The service sector, it is even called as a tertiary sector. The tertiary sector, your service sector, the people who are involved in, like me, teaching, hospitality, doctors, engineers, these are all comes under service sector. So these people are not producing any particular good. The people who produces the goods, they comes under primary sector and the secondary sector. But the people, not producing any goods, but still they're contributing to the country, they are comes under service sector. So if you say even teachers comes under service sector because we are not producing any particular good, but definitely we are giving service, we are giving knowledge, which is not visible as a good. So this way, we have 8 particular areas where people usually involve themselves to produce anything, goods and services, and contribute to the national income. So combiningly the 8 areas what we have, finally we classify that into 3 areas. The first one, this particular one, which is agriculture sector, is considered as primary sector. That will be called as primary sector. Even forestry, fishery, these all comes under agriculture now. Not only agriculture where people are cultivating and involve themselves in the farming, but now even forestry, fishing, other related activities also involved in the primary sector. The second sector which we talk, that is involving manufacturing sector, mining and quarrying and manufacturing sector, electricity, gas, water supply, and at the same time, construction. These all 4 areas which we are talking about that comes under secondary sector. That comes under secondary sector. Primary sector, which involves the agriculture. The secondary sector, which involves mining, manufacturing, electricity, gas, water supply, and the construction. And the last sector which we classified that covers 3 important areas, which is transportation, storage facility, trade, and services. This including, we call it as third area, we call it that as a third area, otherwise we call it as service sector, tertiary sector. Service sector, otherwise tertiary sector, one of the alternative names, synonymous we can use it. So now, after knowing that, these all 8 areas covered in 3 important sectors, primary sector, secondary sector, tertiary sector, otherwise service sector. Let's see now how many people are dependent on primary sector, secondary sector, and the tertiary sector. You can have a look at a table where we have a comparison of all 3 important sectors, primary, secondary, and tertiary sector. On the other side, we have one more comparison, the comparison with the rural and urban, and one more comparison with the gender, which is men and the women. How many % of people in a urban and a rural, they are participating in it, and how many men and women participating in these all areas, we're going to have a look at now. So first of all, let me consider the primary area, which is the main occupation of our country. The maximum our population in our country, more than a half of a population I can call it, that directly or indirectly they're involved in the agriculture sector. So let me see now. So 64.1% of population that are dependent on agriculture were in the rural area. When it urban, only 6.7. Because you already know in the urban areas, maximum industrial and service sector is involved. So agriculture participation in urban area, it is really less. When it comes to men, 43.6% of the population, they're dependent in agriculture. When it comes to women, they are leading with a 62.8%, which is really very high number compared to men. Till now, in the previous classes, I was talking about how much population was involved, men and women. All the time continuously I was telling, men are involving more in the production activity than the women, which was really poor. But right now what we are seeing, the women contribution to the working population ratio when it comes to agriculture, it is really very much leading and very appreciable. to secondary sector very poor, which is 20.4%, which is really very lesser. When it comes to urban area, the contribution involving themselves in the industrial sector, it is really good with a 34.0. Men participation is 25.9. You can combine that round off figure with a 30%, and women with a 20.0. So here, the women participation is lower when it comes to urban and rural. So urban participation in the industrial sector, it is really appreciable. Let's go with the last sector, which is the service sector. The service sector, when we are talking about, the rural contribution is definitely very low, as I said, because the maximum people, they involve themselves in the agriculture sector. You can see here, 60. The maximum population, they are dependent on agriculture sector. That is the reason why the contribution to the service sector, it is really low. One more reason I have told you in the previous class, their education level is really less. The education institutions are so poor, so because of that, if you want to enter the service sector, you need more education, more skill, where the rural area people lacking with. That is the reason why service sector contribution from the rural area, which is really lesser. So can you see here, 15.5%, which is less. Just compare with the urban area, which is 58.3%, which is pretty good. When it comes to men and women, again, men is leading with 30.5%, and women is leading with 17.2. Again, when it comes to gender equality, we don't see gender equality in the service sector also. So after talking about this, when I come to conclusion part, primary sector participation is 48.9%. If you want to give a perfect number, you can say that 50%. The 50%, it is a very big number. Half of the population in our country, they directly or indirectly, they involve themselves in the agriculture. So definitely we have to say that in agriculture-wise, which is a very traditional occupation also, we are contributing better the main occupation employment given by the agriculture. 24.3, which is not appreciable again, because whichever country you're seeing in the worldwide, the countries which are really very well developed, those all countries are developed because they are dependent on industrial sector. But in our country, industrial sector is really poor. You can say that because of lacking with the skills and education, again, the same reasons if I go with, and we want to depend on traditional occupancy only, because of that is also one kind of ignorance. These are all the reasons why, till now, we are hesitating ourselves to involve with a new technology. And the last one, service sector, 26.8% are occupied in the service sector. These days, we are seeing that people hesitating to involve themselves in the industrial sector, but they are not at all hesitating to involve themselves in the service sector. So the next topic is, so the last topic which I'm going to discuss today, the topic is growth and changing structure of employment. So here you have two curves. One curve is talking about the upper curve, it's talking about the GDP, which is gross domestic product, and the second one which we are going to talk about, the second line, that is employment line. So when we are talking about this, what we got to know is the gap between the GDP and employment, it is widened, isn't it? So you can see here, this is the employment ratio, the employment curve, and this is the GDP line, what you are seeing. The gap between this, it is widened in some of the points. Can you see this? I've just marked you. The gap between GDP and employment, when it is going to widen, it is not favorable for economic development. What we'll get to know by this diagram is, the GDP is increasing by not creating much of employment opportunities. If GDP is increasing, with that, employment is also increasing, that is really very good for a country. Everybody is getting job, everybody is getting livelihood, the poverty will be less. But what is happening here? We are seeing GDP is increasing, we are not seeing that country development is less. But when it comes to employment opportunities, it is very less. It is really one of the very effective thing which we have to concentrate more on, where both should increase. The gap between this, it should not widen. So this gap, what we are seeing, if it is widened more and more, that is a biggest threat for a country's people who are living. They cannot earn their livelihood. They'll not get the job. Anyways, GDP will increase. The richer will become more rich and richer. The poor person will stay the same without any job. Poverty standoff level will be very less. For this one, so what we have to see, which kind of a GDP and employment we have to see is, GDP and employment simultaneously both should increase. Otherwise, both should decrease. If both are decreasing, that is not good for the country, but at least both should simultaneously increase. If GDP is increasing, at the same time employment is also increasing, that is the best one. The GDP and employment, they both are interdependent. Few people, few economists, they say that GDP is increasing, because of that employment got created. Few people say that employment got created, that is the reason why GDP is increasing. So both the things are right. We cannot say which is the cause and which is the consequences. They both are the reasons, both are the consequences. But what we want is, we don't want the widened gap between the GDP and the growth. So GDP, your income level, country's income level is increasing, but people are not getting the job. If people are not getting the job, GDP is increasing. So what we think? We think that everybody is getting job. Country is growing. There is no problem in it. But unfortunately, this is wrong when it comes to India. India, where GDP is really increasing, but employment creation is very low. Can you see this widened gap between the GDP and employment? That is one of the threat what we are seeing. So definitely, by seeing this diagram, what we have understood is, not only the GDP, employment creation also should increase. If GDP is increasing, that doesn't mean that we are creating more and more employment opportunities. That is not the right thing. So after this diagram, we have one of a table. So we have lot of comparison and lot of topics in this area-wise we are going to cover. So let me tell you, we have time series data. So in the horizontal one, so what is time series data? Which compares any data in terms of years, months, then it will be called as time series data. Can we see that in the high one? The years I have taken, it is 1972 to 73, 1983, 93, 99, and 2011. This numbers, this years what we are comparing with one year to another year which we are comparing, that will be called time series data. So we have a time series data also. At the same time, we have considering three sectors: primary sector, secondary sector, tertiary sector, otherwise service sector. And we have three important occupation areas. Few people are self-employed, few people are regular salaried, and few people are casual in a nature, casual wage laborers. How many percent we're going to concentrate on it? So first, let me talk about the primary and the secondary, year-wise, whether we have growth, which area is contributing more, in which sector people are dependent more. So year-wise, we're going to compare. So let's talk about the primary sector. In 1972-73, the people who are dependent, that is 74.3%, which is really very huge number, isn't it? After that, what we are seeing is 68.6 started decreasing, diminishing, coming down, because people now they're living agriculture and they're migrating to industrial and the service sector. You see here, 68, 64, 60, 48.9%. That means we came to half of the population now, isn't it? Exactly. So primary sector, which is the agriculture sector maximum, that is started diminishing. People started migrating from agriculture to industrial and the sector. So now let's see how secondary sector, industrial sector, otherwise one more name you can call it manufacturing sector, what is the contribution of it? It was 10.9%. Round off figure, you can consider 11%. 11% of the population dependent in 1972-73. Let's see, 11%, 16%. 16%, again we came down to 15.8%. Very less minor changes. and again we increased to 24.3%, where agriculture sector continuously diminishing, the people are migrating from agriculture. On the other sector, industrial sector, it is bit fluctuating. Continuously it is increasing, but in only 1 year, the year of 1999, most probably that can be the impact of new economic policy, we can say, because skilled people started getting the job and unskilled, they have lost the job. That is one of the impact why that year, industrial sector, secondary sector contribution started diminishing in that particular year. After that, again, it started increase. The third sector is a service sector. As I told you, it is my favorite sector and my sector too. It was 14.8, increased to 16, 20, 23, and 26.8. Service sector contribution, it is really increasing, and definitely service sector growth is very commendable when it comes to all the three sectors. So now, after three sectors, we'll come with these three areas: self-employed, regular salaried, and casual wage laborers. So self-employed people, it was 61% and started decreasing to 57, 52, 54, 52, and 52. So what we started seeing is self-employment ratio is coming down. People doesn't feel secured in the self-employment. Now, one more reason why self-employment is decreasing, you can say that because agriculture sector is diminishing. Agriculture, involving in agriculture sector is also self-employment. The way agriculture sector started diminishing, that means the people started involving themselves in the industrial and the service sector. That is also one of the reasons self-employment is also started diminishing. And the second one, salaried people. The regular salary, where it is a 15.4, started diminishing, 13, 14.6. Finally, we reached to 18.0%, 18%, which is commendable, but we cannot say it is a good success. But yes, we should see that more and more people should depend on regular salaried people because it is very securable. And the last section, we have a few of the topics I have discussed. The casual wage laborers, where their job, salary, nothing is permanent. They migrate from job to job and from the place to place. Let's see how many people are dependent. In 1972 to 73, 23.2% of population, they were dependent. We have started seeing it increasing, 28%, 31%, 32%. In only 2011, we started seeing that it's quite lesser. I'll not say that it started diminishing, but it is definitely lesser. Why people are involving themselves in the as a casual wage laborers? They think that whenever salary is going to increase, whichever the place they find best, wherever they find the best salary they'll skip without any regulation. It is the best way to earn maximum money in the small span. That's why these days in our country, maximum people, they prefer casual wage laborers than the regular salaried people. So this way, what we started seeing is self-employment is declining, but it is still there. Regular salary definitely quite increased, not appreciable, but casual laborers, it is immensely credible where they're increasing without non-stop. So thank you so much.